So this is my daily driver. This is a 2004 Audi Allroad. If you don't know much about these cars, both Jalopnik, Doug DeMuro, and probably a lot of other sources will tell you that this is the least reliable car ever made. That's for a multitude of reasons. There's just a lot going on with this car. It's a twin-turbo all-wheel drive wagon that weighs about 4,200 pounds. And yeah, I've got mine set up to be kind of a Jeep imitator. It's got all-terrains. I believe they're 30-inch, 30 and a half. I'd have to check the size again. In diameter, they're Falcon Wild Peaks. The most exciting part about this car is the engine. It's a twin-turbo 2.7-liter engine, the same engine that was in the Audi S4 of this time, of this era. I have no engine covers just because they're unnecessary and I work on the car all the time. Key factors to note is this car does have RS6 turbos on it, so those are k04 turbos, bigger injectors, catless downpipes, and that's about it as far as upgrades. This is considered by Volkswagen people, I think, stage 3 minus, and the minus is because it's a, sorry for the wind, and the tune is turned down a little bit to prolong the life of the transmission. It's got a crappy pod filter from O'Reilly's. I wanted to keep the stock airbox, but it wasn't going to fit with my catch can setup, so I've got a big catch can off of Amazon, and then these huge dash 10 lines. There are 3 of them. One goes to the center vent, and then the other 2 go to each valve cover. So it's got a ton of ventilation, and it was making a big mess up here because I was just venting it to atmosphere. So I got this huge hose and then a pipe that goes down to the filter way down behind the bumper. So all the oil mist just goes down there, so it's a cleaner engine bay. It does have the red top coil packs, and I'm running NGK Iridiums gapped at 28 thousandths right now, and it runs really, really well with those. These are Hella incandescent lights on the front. They're decently bright. They're actually very useful at night. They don't piss people off too much, and they put out a good amount of light. The fog lights are just stock. The headlights are just the factory xenons. They're not very good. That's about it under the hood. I have had to do a ton of maintenance on this thing. I'll tell you, right off the bat, I paid $1,000 for this car. So you can get these things stupid cheap. I paid $1,000 for this car when I first got it a couple of years ago because it had a blown turbo, and that's an engine out job on these things. You can't really even see the turbos without taking the engine out. So since then, I will tell you, don't ever buy a $1,000 Allroad or a $1,000 turbo anything, because I'm about 5 or 6 grand into the car now, and granted, that is with upgrades. It has bigger turbos, it has downpipes and all that good stuff, so you have to factor that in. Moving around the car, it is still on the air ride suspension. I can show you some of that. So there's an airbag way back in there. I am on all new airbags all the way around the car, but they are Chinese. They are considerably cheaper than the name brand equivalent, and they actually hold air pretty well. Something is still leaking on the air ride. I don't know if it's lines or what it is. I've replaced a lot of the air ride stuff. The only things I haven't done are the lines and the compressor. I rebuilt the compressor and I replaced the distribution block back there, and I replaced all the bags, but something still leaks. Brakes are all redone. Tires are basically brand new. Move around the back, we've got a bunch of annoying stickers. The exhaust is completely stock, so it is fairly quiet, even though it's pretty darn fast. This car is almost as quick as my M3. You'll notice we've got a pretty ridiculous roof basket setup going on. So these are eBay, I believe, what are they, 7? They're either 7 or 6 inch light pod. No, they're 9 inch, right? I don't remember. So we've got these eBay light pods on the top, and then just the little square ones all around. So the square ones on either side are on one switch, so you can light up both sides with one switch. The back ones are on a separate switch, and then the monsters up top are on one switch. All of the wiring is run through my ghetto little conduit. This one has come unglued, but I had these glued next to the windshield so you don't really notice them. And then they run down into the windshield wiper cowl, and then down through the firewall and inside. There's one on either side. So one does the square lights and one does the round lights. And then the rest of the wiring is done inside of the actual roof rack for these guys. So the wires just run all the way around to control those. It's got, I think it's 20% tint. The interior is not too bad. It's nothing incredible. It's tan. I hate tan interior, but this car was cheap and I just wanted a nice all-wheel drive daily that had some good power. One cool thing about the Allroads is they have heated seats front and back, so that's really nice for carrying people around. It's got a ton of headroom because it is a wagon. And yeah, the only thing is everything's tan, but other than that, it's a pretty great car. On the interior, I'll show you quickly. This is my switch panel. This is actually out of a police car, so this controls all of the external lights. It's a really good switch. A guy I used to work with built police cars, so he gave me that switch. It was a spare that he had. Got another mechanical Bosch boost gauge up here just so you can see what the engine is doing. One of the more convenient features about these old German cars is that you can actually hook up a Bluetooth module to it if it has a CD changer equipped. So since this was a CD changer car, which I think most of them were, you can see I've got Bluetooth hooked up for it. That's the wrong one, but you can actually hook your phone up to it, and it's super convenient. The module, the one that I found, was about 40 bucks on eBay, and it works well most of the time. Every now and then the phone will just randomly disconnect, but it's very rare. And one thing that's consistent about it, though, that sucks, is if you go over about, I think if you go over like 100 minutes of something, so like if you're listening to a 3-hour podcast, when it hits the 100-minute mark, it just disconnects. So that's the only thing I've found annoying about it so far. The car has almost 223,000 miles on it. It does smoke a little bit, especially on startup, but it runs really great. I really can't complain about this car. It can go through any amount of snow with no trouble, and it makes a really good amount of power. I've had the engine out twice. I had to replace the turbos twice because my first time I put Chinese k04s in it, and let me tell you, they were broken from the get-go. The car smoked very, very bad from the very beginning with those turbos. I thought maybe it's residual, maybe the exhaust is just caked up with so much oil from the original bad turbo, but no, they just smoked from the beginning, and eventually they just broke. Like the shaft on each one straight up broke. I was driving on one turbo for a long time, and eventually the other one broke and the car just had no power anymore. So I ended up parking it until I could get some real k04s, which I ended up finding on Facebook through an Allroad group. I was able to find a guy that had some used RS6 turbos, and I just went with those. So they're actual Borg-Warner turbos now, and everything's good. So let's go for a quick drive. A few more notes about the car. It is an automatic. I looked for a manual when I was looking for this car, but I could not for the life of me find one anywhere near me. So I ended up just going with the auto. I do plan to manual swap it eventually, but for now, I don't mind having an automatic daily. It makes about 19 PSI of boost at full throttle with this tune. It's supposed to be making somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 horsepower. I haven't dynoed it. There isn't anywhere near me that I could dyno it, so doesn't really matter. The car gets 11 to 14 miles per gallon with the roof rack and the wheels and the tune. It's very terrible on gas, and that's mostly highway as well. It's half and half, I guess. But it's quick and it's fun, so I don't really care. See if we can get away with a launch real quick here. Yep. All right. There's one car coming. All right, sport mode, floor it. And that's 80. And with over 200,000 miles on it, this transmission's definitely not the greatest, but it works. One more little thing about the car is it is still on air ride, but I needed to lift it a little bit to get these giant tires to clear everything. So I made little extender arms. A lot of people call them IPP arms. There's a company called IPP that makes little extender arms for the suspension level sensors all the way around the car. And if you extend them, it basically gives you a greater range of adjustment in your height. So this car has 4 levels of height setting that you can use. The lowest one is like your sport mode, 2 is normal, and then 3 is slightly elevated, and 4 is off-road only. In the off-road only mode, you can only go about 20 miles per hour before it hunkers the car back down. And even in level 3, it only lets you go about 49 miles per hour before it hunkers you back down. And then I think if you go fast enough on the highway, it sticks you down to level 1. So anyway, with the extension arms that are on the car right now, number 1 is basically unusable. Number 1 is like completely aired out on the bump stops. That's for going to Volkswagen meets, obviously. Number 2 is what it takes you down to on the highway, so it's usable. And then number 3 is what I typically drive around in, just because I want it to have a little bit of a lift to it. And even with the lift, I did actually have to clearance the fenders quite a bit. Just the plastic, I just cut away quite a bit of plastic, and I ended up actually buying aftermarket fender liners because they're a little bit thinner, and it gave me just that little bit of extra clearance underneath the fender wells. So yeah, this car is not a slouch. It's not blowing anybody's doors off unless you're racing up against, you know, Kias and Hyundais. I don't think it could take my M3 or the Mustang, but it's fun. It's a good daily. It surprises people.